Okay, I want you to imagine walking a tightrope. You're high above the ground, and every single step requires absolute perfect balance. Now imagine doing that for a grueling 12-hour shift. That, right there, is pretty much the daily reality for a nurse. They're constantly balancing this profound duty to care for people with a super complex web of ethics and laws. It's a high-stakes performance for sure, and their only safety net is their knowledge and their judgment.
So, what guides them on that tightrope walk? In a life or death moment, when a decision has to be made right now, what comes first? Is it their own internal moral compass, pointing them toward what just feels right? Or is it the official rule book, the black and white law that tells them what's required? Well, the thing is, it's no one or the other. It's a constant, dizzying dance between the two. All right, so to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll dive into that moral compass. Then, we'll decode the legal rulebook. After that, we'll look at what all this means for you, your rights as a patient. We'll also touch on what happens when things go wrong. And finally, why keeping careful records is so important for everyone. Okay, first up, the moral compass. And look, this isn't just some vague, fuzzy feeling about being a good person. No, it's a solid, concrete set of principles that guides a nurse through the thousands of shoulds they face on every single shift. The real foundation of this compass is ethics. And here's the key thing to remember. In a professional setting like a hospital, ethics isn't just about someone's personal opinion. It's a structured way of thinking, a framework based on a shared body of knowledge. It's the reason a whole team of nurses from totally different walks of life can all land on the same page about what should be done. And that's really different from morals. See, your morals are deeply personal. They're shaped by your culture, your family, your faith. They guide you. But a nurse? A nurse has to be able to act according to a professional code of ethics, even if sometimes it clashes with their own personal moral beliefs. So here it is in a nutshell. Ethics are about the profession's shared knowledge. It answers the question, what should I do? Morals, on the other hand, are about your personal beliefs. What is the right thing to do? A nurse has to live in both of these worlds, but when they put on those scrubs, their actions are absolutely governed by professional ethics. So what are these big ethical principles? Well, here are the big six. You've got autonomy. That's your right to call the shots in your own care. Then there's beneficence, which is the drive to do good, and its counterpart, non-maleficence, which is the absolute core promise to first do no harm. Justice demands that care is fair for everyone. Fidelity means nurses keep their promises, and veracity, that's all about telling the truth. These are the building blocks of trustworthy care. And this is where that tightrope really starts to wobble. What happens when the duty to do good, beneficence, crashes head-on with a patient's right to say no, their autonomy? This is what we call an ethical dilemma. It's a situation with no perfect, easy answer. And believe me, nurses face these all the time. So how do they get through it? They don't just guess. They use a very structured process to think it through, to move from a gut feeling to a decision they can actually stand behind. They gather all the facts, they check their own biases, they clearly state the problem, they weigh all the options, and then they act and evaluate what happened. It's a deliberate, professional way to handle the toughest calls. Okay, let's hop off the moral side of the tightrope for a minute and jump over to the other side. We're shifting from the philosophical shoulds to the legally binding musts. This is the rule book, the set of laws that every nurse has to follow, no exceptions. And right at the top of that rule book is something called the Nurse Practice Act. Every state has its own. And it is, quite literally, the law of the land for nursing. It spells out exactly what a nurse is, what they're legally allowed to do, and what it takes to earn and keep their license. And baked right into that act are the standards of care. Think of it this way. If the law says what a nurse can do, the standards define how well they have to do it. It's the legal measuring stick that a court would use to answer one critical question. Was the care this nurse gave reasonably safe and competent? So you might be thinking, okay, interesting, but why does this matter to me? Well, it matters a whole lot because these ethical principles and legal rules aren't just for nurses. They exist to protect you, the patient, and to make sure that you are always in the driver's seat when it comes to your own health. And one of your most critical rights is informed consent. I mean, this is so much more than just scribbling your name on a form. It is your absolute right to get a clear, easy-to-understand explanation of the risks, the benefits, and any alternatives before you agree to a single thing. It makes you an active partner in your care, not just someone things happen to. And when we're talking about your personal medical information, your privacy, there's one acronym that everyone, and I mean everyone, needs to know: HIPAA. That's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. HIPAA gives you some serious power over your own health story. You have the right to see your own records, to get mistakes corrected, and even to ask for a list of who's been looking at them. You can also request limits on who gets to see your information in the future. It really puts you back in control of your most personal data. So all these rights and standards, they're like a protective barrier for you as a patient. But what happens when that barrier is breached? What happens when the standard of care just isn't met? This is where things get serious, and we have to talk about the legal risks and liabilities nurses face when something goes wrong. You probably heard both of these words thrown around. Negligence is kind of a general term for carelessness, like a driver who blows through a red light. Malpractice is way more specific. It's negligence by a professional. So if a nurse gives the wrong medication, that's not just a simple mistake. It's a professional failure that's measured against those legal standards of care. Now, let's run through a few key legal no-nos. First up, assault. And this is so important. Assault doesn't require anyone to actually be touched. If a nurse threatens a patient, say with an injection just to get them to cooperate, that threat itself can be considered assault. Battery, then, is the follow-through. It's the actual intentional touching of a person without their permission. So if assault is the threat, battery is the act. And this is exactly why that whole informed consent thing we talked about is so incredibly crucial. And finally, there's false imprisonment. This is when a patient is prevented from leaving a hospital or clinic when there's no legal reason to keep them there. A competent adult always has the right to leave, and they can do it by signing a form called an Against Medical Advice Form, or AMA. Phew, okay. So with all these ethical principles, complex laws, and scary risks swirling around, what's the single most powerful tool for protecting both the patient and the nurse? It really all comes down to one thing: meticulous, accurate, and honest documentation. And this table here really shows you the incredible level of precision we're talking about. On the do side, you gotta be objective, factual, and document everything right away. On the don't side, you never use judgmental language, never leave blank spaces, and you never chart for another person. Every single entry has to be just right, because a patient's chart isn't just a record of their care, it's a legal document where every single word matters. So, after all this, the next time you meet a nurse, what are you going to see differently? Maybe beyond the clinical skills and the comforting smile, you'll also see the ethicist, the legal expert, and the fierce patient advocate, all of them walking that same incredible tightrope with skill, with knowledge, and with a deep, profound commitment to taking care of us.